the American jurist, Hugo Black was a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan, an anti-black, violent terrorist organization. Card-carrying member. He was an official member, and he admitted that. I'm a card-carrying member of the Ku Klux Klan. But he was also a Supreme Court justice, and he believed in equal rights for black people. He believed in both of these contradictory things at the same time. The problem is, when push comes to shove, as it often does, you can believe in both, but you can only do one. Do you understand? And when he sat on the Supreme Court, and he had to decide in the unanimous decision of Brown versus Board of Education whether black children could have an equal education with white children, he could believe in both, but he could only do one, and he voted with the unanimous court that supported Brown versus Board of Education. Can't be a Klansman anymore. He can't do it anymore. He might believe in it, but he can't practice it. Ho Chi Minh, the great Vietnamese statesman. Ho Chi Minh believed in self-determination. Before World War I, he wrote to Woodrow Wilson, the president of the United States, and he told Woodrow Wilson in a letter that he believed that every person had the right to decide how they wanted to be governed. He believed in self-determination. He believed in democracy. But he was also a communist. And when push came to shove, he could only act, he believed in both. But when push came to shove, he could only do one. And that one that he did was hardcore communism. Thomas Jefferson, third president of the United States, wrote the Declaration of Independence. Liberty, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It's a God-given right. All men, not some men, all men are created equal. Thomas Jefferson believed that. He believed it with all his heart. However, he also owned 600 slaves. And in his entire lifetime, he only freed 3. He believed in democracy and liberty. He also believed in the enslavement, the brutal enslavement of black people. And when push came to shove, he believed in both, but he could only do how many? One. You can believe in evolution, and you can also believe in creation. You can believe in both. I'm going to show you why you can only do one. So, if you have the handout, did I have enough? Did I have enough to go around? I lost, whoops, oh, I left something. Yes. If I slip into Portuguese, está atrás en bolsa. Sim, esta antier que mal. Yeah, same. So my wife is from Brazil. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So my wife is from Brazil and she speaks Portuguese and we speak Portuguese to each other. So I speak Portuguese. Sometimes I forget where I'm at. So if you look at the handout, we have there origins and basic assumptions. You see there that I have the creation postulates. 4 creation postulates have all been observed. And I have 4 there. Number 1, there are 4 creation postulates and there are 4 evolutionary postulates. A postulate is a basic assumption, okay? Science is the use of observation, record keeping, controlled analysis of the empirical world that is falsified by others. Science has basic assumptions, but it has nothing to do with faith. I'm not here to help you with your faith. I can't do that. I'm here to talk about science. Observation, record keeping, controlled analysis of the empirical world, something you can see, touch, and feel. That's science. That you can prove wrong, that is falsifiable by others. If you can't prove something wrong, you cannot prove it right. All right? Most of the things that are important to us in this world are beyond the reach of science. Love, music, God, beyond the reach of science. The most important things are beyond the reach of science. You have to understand that. But when we're talking about science, we're talking about the use of observation, record keeping, controlled analysis. I can decide and control what goes into the experiment and what comes out of it, which is falsifiable. You have to be able to prove it wrong. If you can't prove it wrong, it is not science. Observation, that is science. No one saw the world created by God. No one saw it. There was no one there to create it. Creation is not science. No one saw the primordial soup and the first cell develop. No one saw that. No one recorded it. Evolution is not science. Origins are not science because they were not observed. None of it is science. And anybody who claims that it is, they're lying, or they don't know what they're doing. Science is the use of observation, record keeping, and controlled analysis of the empirical world. No origin was observed by any human being. Therefore, they are not science. So now you may ask me, well, whoa, okay, Major, so what do we have? What do we have left? What we have left is what we call scientific assumptions. It's an assumption based on something that is related to the original theory. A scientific assumption. So we never saw evolution, but we say if evolution is true, then something that is related to evolution that we can measure, that is how we infer. Scientific inference. If this thing that we can measure is related to evolution, and we can find that that is true, then we infer, we assume that evolution is true. If we have a scientific thing, test, experiment, that we can measure, and it is related to creation, then we assume, we infer that creation is true. Have I lost anybody? I've lost somebody. You cannot measure evolution with science. And anybody that says that evolution is science, they're either lying to you or they want you to experience it religiously. Right? Because evolution and creation are both religions. They're based on faith for most people. Most people don't know the scientific inferences, the scientific assumptions for either one. They accept it based on faith. Their parents believed it. Their professor believed it, and therefore they believed it. They never measured it. They never tested it. Okay? That's okay. That's okay. I don't challenge anyone who has an origin belief, an origin faith belief. We should respect all faith beliefs. That does not mean they're true. That does not mean they're supported by science. And I'm not a preacher. If you have an origin theory that you hold dear to you as a faith experience, that is true. I'm not here to change your mind. I am here to show you what the science supports. That's all. So let's look at the handout, and we're going to talk about the 4 postulates for creation and the 4 postulates for evolution. They are inferences. There are assumptions based on the science that we can measure. 4 postulates. The first postulate of creation in the handout that I gave you is that life is a complex artifact based on codes and programs. It's a complex artifact based on codes and programs, far beyond the mind of man. Thus, life had to be created and constructed somewhere, sometime, by someone who has a level of technology beyond our capacity. One human, one prokaryote cell has billions and billions of operating parts that we cannot create. Anybody that tells you that we've created a living cell in a test tube is wrong. We cannot do it. It's never been done. In the Miller experiment, we mixed a few amino acids, right? The experiment failed. It also created cyanide, and it created left-handed and right-handed amino acids, when in a cell, we only use right-handed amino acids. All right? It failed. Doesn't say that in evolutionary textbooks. Life is a complex artifact, far beyond the mind of man. We can measure that. We can see that. The DNA has millions of connections. Billions of connections. One DNA strand in one human cell. A code is a level of intelligence. Why? Because it translates from one language into another language. Only intelligence can do that. That's our first basic assumption, okay? Our second basic creation, inference. Life was created in the basic kinds, kingdoms, phylum, classes, orders, families, genes, and species that we see today, with only minor variations within kinds. We have many thousands of different kinds of dogs, but not only that, wolves are dogs, coyotes are dogs, dingoes are dogs, foxes are dogs, German shepherds are dogs, St. Bernards are dogs, and all kinds of dogs that I can't. They're all dogs. How do you say, how do you know that? Because they can all interbreed. You can turn a wolf into a dog. You can't turn a dog back into a wolf. All right? Tigers are cats. Lions are cats. Leopards are cats. Jaguars are cats. Cougars are cats. Are there any big cats in the Bahamas? No, okay, all right, good. All right. Siamese cats are cats. Tabbies are cats. They're all cats. Why? How do you say how? Because they can interbreed. But there are no dog cats. There are no cat dogs. And you can't do, there's limits to what you can breed. Okay? That's minor genetic variation that can separate between species. Now here's the difficult part. Here's the part that gets controversial. People, just like cats and dogs, have different colors, right? Different sizes. And then, with the invention of science, we started to say they are different species, different races. That is not true. Race is a scientific term that means species. There's only one human species, and they can all interbreed. Okay? All right? And there are limits to that. All right? Human beings are not apes. They're not chimpanzees, and they can't interbreed. Although, during the age of Jim Crow, there were several scientists who tried to implant ape semen in black women and made them sterile. That's how sick evolution is, and will drive you to do those kinds of things. There are different species, and that's how the Bible describes it, and that is what we see today. We can see it with our eyes. We do not see crosses between different kinds of species. We do not see it. Okay? And I'm just talking about minor genetic variation between different types of dogs, different types of cats. I'm not talking about an evolutionary scenario where we're going from fish to cows. All right? Basic postulate, basic inference number 2 for creation. Basic inference number 3, the Earth, the solar system, the galaxy are young, measured in thousands, not millions or billions of years. I'm going to do that in just a minute. Okay? Do it real quick right now. That is, the Bible, if you measure the years in the Bible, it shows that the Earth is 6,142 years old and it was created on my birthday. That was a joke. That's not really a joke. I just said that. Created, started on my birthday. Evolution says that the universe is 13.7 billion years old. Somebody here who accepts a biblical narrative, can you tell me, can we verify that the Earth, the solar system, and the universe is less than 10,000 years without using the Bible? Can anybody do that? Really? Well, I'm not going to tell you. No. I should tell you. That is, how can we tell that? By things that we can see with our eyes. What's the oldest living thing on the planet? Excuse me? The oldest living thing on planet Earth. Living. Excuse me? Lizards. That was close. That was good. Lizards. They can be old. Lizards can be over 100 years old. Some of them, turtles, can be over several hundred years old. But they're not the oldest living thing. Trees are the oldest living thing. Trees are the oldest living thing. The great sequoias and the redwoods out in California, they seem to be totally immune to disease unless you chop one down or you burn one down. They seem to just grow and grow. And there's not a petrified stand underneath them. They're the first stand of trees there. The bristletone pines, also in California, the oldest trees. How old is the oldest one that we have? 4,500 years. That shouldn't be so. 4,500 years ago would date back to the age of the flood, 2,500 BC. Why is that so if we've been here? The Earth has been here for millions of years, and there's not a petrified stand of trees underneath them. They're the first growth. Why is that so? That's so because evolution is false. It never happened. So now we've taken care of planet Earth. Let's look at the sky. Does anybody know what a solar nebula is? A solar nebula happens when a star explodes. All right? The star can explode completely, or it can throw off its outer shell. Right? And it creates a gas cloud that we call a nebula. Our radio telescopes can see them and count them. It's called a supernova. Boom! Not the Big Bang. Supernova. A supernova takes place about every 26 years. So we can actually count them. If the universe were billions of years old, already there should be supernova everywhere. Guess how many supernovae there are? 6,000 years worth. Those are just a few examples. Let's move on. Let's move on quickly here. The geology we see today, including Earth's oceans, continents, magnetic field, radioactivity, and the fossil record, were all created in a worldwide flood in approximately 2500 BC. The world is covered with limestone. Limestone precipitates out of water. There are some limestone cliffs, like the Rock of Gibraltar. That's all limestone. It's all white. All right? Where did all of that limestone, where did the water come from to precipitate out like that? Where did it come from? The earth is covered with what I call mudstone. It's also called shale. It also is created with a mixture of earth and water. Right? Covered with it. I propose to you that in 2500 BC, there was a subterranean water chamber 60 miles down beneath the granite crust of the earth. It was about a mile deep. And because of the tidal pull of the moon and the sun on the earth's crust, that granite crust, 60 miles deep, was pulling and stretching it, pulling and stretching. And just like a hanger, when you bend it in your hand, it gets hot and it'll eventually break. The crust cracked. There was a mile deep of water down there, 60 miles down under the crust, and it was at almost 1,000 degrees. And it was still liquid because it's what we call supercritical pressure. If you put water under enough pressure, it doesn't boil no matter how hot it gets, it stays liquid. Once that crust cracked, that steam and water burst forth from that subterranean chamber with the force of 1,000 trillion atomic bombs. It killed everyone and everything, and it had circled the globe in 2 hours. And it left its mark. It's called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. In fact, some of the water is still down there. We call them black smokers. That's science. That's what you can see. That's real scientific inference. Now let's look quickly at the basic postulates for evolutionary theory. Let's see them and see if there's evidence for them. Number one, life comes from non-life. Life comes from non-life. We have not one example of life coming from non-life. Louis Pasteur proved that true in the 1900s. Okay, proved that it's true. There's no such thing as spontaneous generation. This law is so universal that we even have a name for it. We call it the law of biogenesis. We don't have one example of life coming from something that is not alive. Now, again, in the 1600s and 1700s, people used to believe this. They would take rags and they would put some wheat with it and they would put it in a barn, and if you came back in a few days, there'd be mice there. And we said, so rags and wheat create mice. You can still do that same experiment today and the same thing will happen. Same thing will happen, but we interpret it differently, right? Same thing will happen. But when you control for it, if you put a cage around it, a screen around it, heck, guess what? There won't be any mice. Louis Pasteur did the same thing. He boiled broth, but he covered the beaker with a towel so no air could get in. Once it was sterile, no bugs could get in there. It stayed that way. We have not one example of life coming from non-life. That's the basic and first preposition inference of evolution, and it has been scientifically proven to be false. Number two, let's look at this. Complex plant and animal life, including humans, came from single-cell life forms. Well, guess what? We do have single-cell life forms. They're called bacteria. All right? But we don't have any two-cell life forms. We don't have any three-cell life forms. We don't have four-cell life forms. We don't have any five forms. We go from single-cell life forms to complex life, an explosion of life from the pre-Cambrian later, from nothing in the Cambrian later, we get complex life with thousands and millions of cells. Nothing in between. How did we get from one to the other? There's no evidence to support that. Basic evolution, that's observation. We can see that it doesn't exist. Evolutionary postulate, inference, number three. The process which drives evolution forward are time, chance, and natural selection. The probability of a simple 100-unit protein, and a 100-unit protein, that's with 100 amino acids to create that protein. Something really, really very basic like your hair or something like that. Not something like your eye. Let's not get complex. Let's keep it simple. A simple 100-unit protein in exact sequence, and how you arrange the proteins determine whether it makes hair or an eye or a bone. It's incredible. The possibility of a simple 100-unit protein, now get this, assembling itself is 10 to the 116. Now I know that number doesn't mean very much, 10 to the 116. Well, so what? I can count to 116. 1, 2, 3, well, it takes too long. But just to give you an idea of how big that number is, in the entire universe, all the atoms that you can get in the entire universe are only 10 to the 70. All the atoms in the universe. If there was a primordial soup somewhere, and you had a lightning strike hitting the primordial soup 1,000 times a second, 1,000 times a second, for 1 billion years, do you know how many times that is? You know how big a number that is? 10 to the 40. That is statistics. What is it about evolution that allows it to violate the laws of statistics that apply to everything else? Nothing about it. Michael Denton, the genetic biologist from Australia, he said, a cell, a prokaryote cell, assembling itself would be indistinguishable from a miracle. That is no different than saying, God spoke and it was done. He commanded and it stood fast. No different than that. Evolution demands not only faith, it demands blind faith. Blind faith. Evolutionary postulate number 4. The evidence for major evolutionary processes, fish turning into cows, are minor genetic variation within a species. The dean mentioned this, Gregor Mendel. He demonstrated that in the 1800s. That you can mix genes and you can create different types of peas, but there are no new genes. Different colors cast are all the same genes being mixed up again and again and again. Different human beings with different amounts of melanin in their skin. You didn't create a new gene. All the genes were there in the beginning. That cats are different colors and different sizes, that dogs are different colors and different sizes, that we have different types of fish, that is presented as the evidence for evolution. It is not. It is simply a minor genetic variation within a species. Evolution has been the basic postulates, the inferences upon which evolution is based have been scientifically proven to be false. So let's look at one. In my little handout there, you'll see that in my program lasts for an entire day. Lasts for an exhausting 12-hour day. We start at 8 in the morning and we finish at 8 o'clock at night, but we serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner. All right, so we go all day with covering each of the 9 basic areas. I'm not going to hold you that long because I'm hungry too. But we're going to take just one of them for 30 minutes, all right? Take one of them for 30 minutes, and we're going to talk about it really quickly and see if we can do it. Do we have? Let me ask my host, I better not do that. Do we have 30 minutes? What do you want to do? We could do Noah's Ark. What do you want to do? We can do, you can pick. There's a problem with this. So I have the largest authentic model of Noah's Ark in the world. If this were the size of a human being, Noah's Ark would be 12 feet long. The first ship that was built that was larger than Noah's Ark was the most famous ship in the world, the RMS Titanic. And it was twice the size of Noah's Ark, 46,000 cubic feet. Noah's Ark was about half that size, 23,000 cubic feet. The big queen of the, what is it? I forgot the name.
Oasis of the Seas?
Oasis of the Seas. I went downtown, that's what I saw today. Man, it was bigger than any building, it's gigantic. That's 150,000 cubic feet. It's 3 times the size of the Titanic. All right? It would be 6 times the size of Noah's Ark. But they couldn't survive Noah. They couldn't survive the flood because they're too high. Noah's Ark road, half of it was submerged, right? So there was nothing for the wind to catch onto. The only problem, we could do that. We could do Noah's Ark. The only problem is that because my computer wasn't working, I didn't load that file onto my thumb drive. I'd have to load it from my computer to this one before we could show it. What do you want to do? You want to do this one, which I have loaded? I can do that. You said you want to do Noah's Ark. I want to do it too. All right, it's Noah's Ark. All right, just give me a minute. Give me a minute. Okay. Oh, they're under here, so they can hear me. John Wood Moorthrop, he wrote a fabulous book called Noah's Ark, A Feasibility Assumption. And everyone knows that all the jokes about Noah's Ark, that you can't fit every animal in the world in Noah's Ark. And of course, that is certainly true, and the Bible never said that. You can't fit every species of animal in Noah's Ark, and of course the Bible never said that. It said every kind of animal. And so he did a feasibility study, and he said, what was the average size of animal on the ark, and how many animals would you need there to cover, all the cats, all the dogs, all the cows, all the deers, all the pachyderms? And he figured it out. He said you'd need 15,000 animals. And then he went further than that. He said, how big would the average animal be? And he said the average animal on the ark was the size of a rat, a small rat. And you say, how in the world did he come to that? Well, it was easy. He said, in the entire world, we have 90 different kinds of animals that could potentially interbreed. Now, sometimes, with time, some of these animals would become genetically separated. So the idea that you're going to cross a Siamese cat with a tiger, a 600-pound tiger, that's not going to happen, all right? But if you went back far enough, they're both cats, right? Some got very, very small and some got very, very big, but they're both cats. You can certainly cross a tiger and a lion. And technically, that is, if you had enough time, I suppose you could cross others. Doesn't mean that once they become genetically isolated, that doesn't mean they didn't start from a common point. So he said, you'd probably need 15,000, and he said the average size would be the size of a rat. So let's take a look at this. So we look at the Encyclopedia of Animals, all right? And I looked there and I found out that there were 90 different kinds, basic groupings of animals. And so I took the largest animal in each grouping and I said, if there are 90 different kinds, and if the average size was the size of a rat, by the time I get to the midpoint, I should be down to the size of a rat. And you'd be surprised at what I found. And I said, we have to even include prehistoric animals, extinct animals, the largest land animal that ever lived, the Brachiosaurus, 70 feet long, 110 tons, 110,000 pounds, 52 tons. Well, let's take a look. So the first thing I had to do, I started off, so I had to build an ark, right? I had to build an ark. And it cost me a pretty penny. There it is. All right. Here's to scale. See, those are people up top there. Can you see them? Let's see if we can get a better picture. Those are people on top of the ark. All right. It was 540 feet long, and of course I had to build it so that I could get it inside of a truck. It won't fit inside of a car, but at least so I could get it inside of a truck. So I built it in 3 pieces so you could take it apart. All right. Here are the largest land animals, all of them together, and you can see that they could easily, they could easily fit inside of the ark. All right. All of them, even if you wanted them full size, they could all fit on. There were 3 floors to the ark. They could all fit on 1 floor. Including their food and water. We have 20th century eyewitness accounts of the ark. Ed Davis, a sergeant during World War II, was the last person to actually see Noah's Ark. Some of the tribesmen there near Mount Ararat took him to see it, a 3-day hike, and he described it. They gave him lie detector tests to see if he was lying, and his description matched 19th century descriptions of Noah's Ark. The walls were 3 feet thick. There's no such thing as a 540-foot long tree today. So you cannot build an authentic, full-size model of Noah's Ark. It's absolutely impossible. This is the biggest one that exists today, and it cost me $8,000 to build. It's made out of white oak, built by hand. There are no, and Noah's Ark was put together with wooden pegs. And it was unibody construction. It was not built out of lumber. It was built out of hewn logs. So there was no frame on the inside. All right, it was all open. It was all open space. Here again, you can see the people down there. There's 8 people. It would have been built on a launching platform, so the first wave of water that hit it would have been absorbed by the platform. These would have been sunk down 100 feet into the ground, and so that it would float after several days. All right. Here's a car. Buy it. We'll go on the inside and we'll take a look. See what. Now, of course, you wouldn't. I just put all these dinosaurs here because actually I like plastic dinosaurs. Okay, I mean I really get a kick out of it. But just to line them all up, if you were crazy enough to take a full-size brachiosaurus on the ark and clean out its waste, then God help you. If you wanted to do it, there's enough space in there to do it. Okay? But why would you do that when you could take babies? Okay? There they all are. It's a 400 square foot layout. All right? It's a back-breaking job. It takes all day to set up. I've never set it up myself. I always have students to help me. If I tried to do it myself, I'd pull my back out. All right? Here's a pickup truck and a van. You can see how huge it was. This is a 6-story building. I mean, good night. It would be 100 feet tall. Here's a football field. So it was longer. Each floor had about the area of a football field, an entire football field, not including the end zone. Okay, I want to see some of the. So this is an open floor. So you can see here the people. Here's the van. This would be the food. This would be the water. All of the animals would fit on one floor of the ark, including all of their food and all of their water for a year. The flood took 1 year. It lasted an entire year. Okay, and you can see how much space there is. And again, that's just one floor. There would be 3 floors exactly this size. All right, these are automatic cages. So it would have water. It would have a water trough that would flow through all of the cages, so the animals could water themselves. The bottom is slotted, so the waste would fall through and would fall. You could have a trowel here. You could either scrape it out or it would fall automatically and push itself out. So they could be fully automatic. All right, there's a close-up. You could see here, you could load a food. What kind of food do you think they fed the animals? Think about this. What would you do if you had to subsist for an entire year and you had to feed all of them? We don't know what they fed all the animals. But I'm going to tell you what I would feed them. Lentils. They're flat and they swell up to 3 times their size when they're mixed with water. If you had all of that filled with lentils, that is, you couldn't use it up in a year. If that's the size of it, it would be 1 million pounds of lentils. You couldn't. Yeah, and of course some of them would just eat it dry, and then when they drank it would swell up, so they'd be full. You just pour the lentils down here, and then the animals could feed themselves from the cage, fully automatic. All right. We do a rock display. I'm not going to do that now, along with a bookshelf that we have with our students on my campus, on a secular campus. And we get, unlike your campus here, our secular campuses are not open, Dean. They do not welcome opposing ideas. Most of them are controlled by evolutionists, and it's my job to stop them. And I do stop them. I tell them, I say, look, if evolution is true, I have a friend, Dr. Walter Brown, with the Center for Scientific Creation. I put up $10,000, he puts up $10,000. We show up Saturday morning with 2 cashier's checks and we say, look, you don't want our programs, and they've written in the student newspaper to shut our programs down. And I said, there's an easy way to shut us down. You come forward Saturday morning, I'll give you $20,000 if you will sign a document saying that you will engage in a written, not verbal, a written debate on the science of evolution versus creation. You take the $10,000, you engage in the written debate, you'll prove us that we're wrong. We will be so embarrassed, so humiliated, that believe me, we would never, ever have this program again with everyone laughing at us. I said, believe me, that would shut us down. Guess how many professors from the evolutionary studies department show up? Not a one. For $20,000, I can't give it away. Can't give it away. Now, there's a reason for that, and there's a reason why we're offering that kind of money. They don't have to win to get the money. You don't have to win, because you're not going to win. You're going to get your butt kicked in public, all right? That's why they don't show up, all right? Here's a cutaway of the ark. This is a cutaway with the 3 different levels of the ark. Each level would have been about 20 feet high inside, okay? So you don't have to split it up evenly. If you wanted to have a full-size brachiosaurus and you insisted on it, no, I want a full-size brachiosaurus. I mean, I think that's kind of silly, but yes, you could put it in there. And of course, you could always adjust this deck, and you could have 4 of them in there, and feed them if that's what you wanted to do. Here's a full-size T-Rex on one deck, a full-size, here's a person, a human being, how small they would be. All right, here's our automatic cage again. Let's see if we can get inside. So now here are babies, same number of animals, babies. Look how many of them. I mean, same number of dinosaurs, babies. Why would you take full-size ones? Easily fit. Easily fit. Here they are again. Whoa, go too fast. Here are all the babies on the first floor of the ark with their food in the water. And the rest of it is for rat-sized animals. These are all your large-sized animals. That's all you have. All the dinosaurs. Anybody tells you that Noah's Ark is fiction doesn't know what they're talking about. Now here are full-size animals. Again, you can see that they easily fit in the space of a football field if you insisted on doing that, taking these 50-ton animals on the ark. If that's your thing, but I'd say you had a real problem if you wanted to do that. Okay, but again, it's feasible, and this is just one floor. The rest of the floors could be for whatever you wanted to do with it. Okay. So now, here, I say that the average size is the size of a rat. So let's do the math, as I say. Let's do the math, okay? Let's see if we can count every species, every kind, not species. Now, the truth of the matter is, this is something that evolutionists, they attack us creationists on. And they say, you don't know how many kinds there were, and you don't know what a kind is. And I'm saying, well, neither do you. You claim that they all came from one simple cell. You don't know either. All right? So I'm taking the Encyclopedia of Animals. You divided it up. You gave those names of those different phylum and genuses. Then you decide how many there were. All right? But I looked myself, and there are 90. So I said, and that's, of course, they don't have dinosaurs in there. Right? So, I mean, there are some that went extinct. So let's look. Let's see how many. Let's see if we can get to 45. There are 90 of them. So we're gonna go from biggest to smallest, the largest one in each group, and see how many does it take. All right. So we start with a brachiosaurus. Anybody seen a brachiosaurus recently? I haven't seen one. If anybody sees one, please let me know. All right, because I'd like to see one. A brachiosaurus, 52 tons, 110,000 pounds. That's number one. T-Rex, 6,000 pounds. Size of a full-size bull elephant. That's number two. All right. Now, I can't even pronounce that. But it's an extinct type of elephant, some kind of pachyderm. Somebody who's taken biology can help me. But I flunked English, so I can't do it. I can't do Latin either. So anyway, you do it. You do it, okay? I'm not gonna do it. All right. So that's number 3. Now we don't actually have to include this one and this one because they're both elephants. But I did it just to make it hard. Okay, so I'm going to include both of them. All right. Number 3, number 4, an elephant. Here we have an elephant seal. Would you need an elephant seal on the ark? No, it lives in the water. It's a mammal, but it lives in the water, all right? So it doesn't have to be on the ark. We can include it, but I scratch it. Then we go to our rhinoceros, number 5, fine. We'll go to a hippopotamus, number 6, fine. Now this one is an extinct type of giant armadillo. If you want to compare them, look here. This is a full-size man and this is a full-size woman. This is some kind of extinct armadillo. Ooh, okay, take it, put it on the ark, however you pronounce it, if you can pronounce the name, put it on the ark. A giraffe, number 8. Notice how we went down 8 and we went from a full-size brachiosaurus, now we're down to a giraffe. Still a 2,000-pound animal. That's a big animal, but not compared here. An American, whoa, what in the world? I'm sorry, my clicker, I hope that doesn't mean the battery's gonna die. Uh-oh. Back up. A bison, let's see if it settles down. Crocodile, number 10. They are semi-aquatic. They can live underwater. If you want to take one, fine. I'm not going to argue with you. I wouldn't take one, right? Because it can live in the water. Many of them would have died during the flood, but enough would survive, all right? A moose, we take it. A steer. A steer is a castrated something, bull or something like that. But this was the biggest cow I could find that was to scale with the ark, right? So there's some real limits here, right? A steer, number 12. A 2-humped camel, number 13. A 1-humped camel, I think it's called a dromedary. I don't know what you call 2 humps. A brown bear, number 14. A polar bear, they're both bears and they can interbreed. And they do interbreed even in the wild sometimes where their paths cross, okay? So we're not gonna count them both, so we just count one. A 1-humped camel, I'm staying at number 14 because they're both camels, all right? They can interbreed, all right? Maybe that is somebody bred them differently like that, whether they wanted to carry cargo or transport people, all right? A reindeer, which we also call caribou, it's a deer. It's a type of deer, all right? They can interbreed. So I'm saying I don't have to take both of them. A giant kudu from Africa, that's also a deer. We don't have to take it, all right? A walrus, I'm not gonna take it. It lives in the water, all right? It has flappers. Let it stay in the water, all right? Yes, it's a mammal, but it can swim. A horse, yes, we'll take that. Tiger, yes, we'll take that. An elk, we're not gonna take that because a moose, a reindeer, and a giant kudu, they're all the same thing. They're different types of, they're not dogs, but they're different types of deer, okay? A black bear, a grizzly bear, a Kodiak bear, a brown bear, they're all brown bears, okay? But they're different types of species, different species. A polar bear, a black bear, they're all bears. How many of them do I want? You know, I mean, the genes will eventually separate them anyway, all right? A black bear, so I'm not gonna take a separate bear for that. A wild hog, okay, that's our first hog, we'll take it. A lion, how many cats do you need? How many big cats do you need? We got a tiger, we got a lion, all right? A deer, I have too many deer already. A muskox. Now I took the muskox because I don't know what a muskox is. I don't know another animal like a muskox, so I'll take the muskox, all right? A gorilla, a panda bear, still a bear, not gonna take it. A leopard, still a big cat, still a big cat. A boa constrictor, I'll take that because I don't know anything else besides a boa constrictor, all right? A ram, I'll take that. A cougar, that's still a big cat too. A jaguar, still a big cat. All right? A kangaroo, a marsupial. Yeah, I'll take that. Do you know what many people will say if you're a creationist and you run into an evolutionist? One of the biggest challenges that they will give to a creationist, they will tell you, well, tell me something. How did all the marsupials get to Australia? Did they leave Noah's Ark in Ararat and swim to Australia and then they all died there? You know, all the marsupials in Australia, tell me how that happened, you stupid creationist, right? And and now I'm gonna tell you what they're doing. They're lying because you don't know the science. They're trying to get you to think that because kangaroos are only found in Australia, that's the only place that kangaroo fossils are found. That is not true. Kangaroo fossils are all over the world. They don't tell you that. They don't tell you that. All right. Yes, kangaroo. Somehow their range was constricted. How? Probably because as the seas rose, all right, and they migrated, they couldn't go back the other direction. Probably. There are many animals like that. We don't know why their range shrank, but their fossils are found all over the world. That is not a problem for creationists. Actually, it's a problem for evolutionists. I'm saying, where did all those fossils go? Why aren't there any transitionary fossils? Where are those? You can explain that. It's not a problem for me. You've got to have I'm trained as a lawyer. I'm not nice. I'm not a nice person. My job is to win. I'm not here to show that both theories are right. I'm here to show that my client is right and yours is wrong. Give me a break. A kangaroo. Okay, a wolf, a dog, a fox. They're all dogs. All right? I don't need all of them. All I need is 4 dogs, 2 dog pairs. That's all I need on the ark. All right? Beavers, whoa, I can't control, what the world? Beavers, groundhogs, okay, take them. Rabbits, now look, we've gone through 26 kinds, and look how small we are. We forget about 45, I've got to go to 45. Raccoons, Professor Burrows, can I blame you? I can't blame you for this. Okay, I can't blame you. Okay, all right, a house cat, I have to blame somebody. Squirrels, we're down to 30. A rat, 31, and we're down to a rat. We've gone through 31 kinds. There are 90 of them. We've gone through only 30 by size, and we're 30 and we're down to a rat, mice, a turtle, a frog, a snake, a bird, a duck. Most of the animals on the ark were birds. Most of them were birds. And birds don't need a lot of space. What is most important to birds is vertical space, even if it's limited. Okay, they need to go up and down. So you didn't need much space for that. Here they all are again, full size on the ark. You've completed basic assumption number 8. If this was an all-day session, we would have 7 more sessions like that to go, and we would break for lunch, but we're going to stop there and take questions. Thank you so much. Any questions? Any questions? Don't be afraid. I don't bite. Even if I want to say this. I want to say that I have tremendous respect for evolutionists. You know why? Because they're the best scientists. Most creationists believe it because of their church background. That's okay, but they don't really know the science. That's not okay. I have a tremendous amount of respect for evolutionists because they know more science than do creationists. So I don't mind being challenged at all. The problem is we do need diversity on campus, and that is we need a diversity of views, and we need to look at the science, not the faith. There's nothing wrong with faith. All right, I believed the creation story my whole life, but I never knew the science that supported it. All right, I like to say that evidence is better than faith. Experience better than faith. You can see it. Even Jesus said, remember he said, if you don't believe me, believe based on the miracles themselves. He's saying, believe the science. Believe what you can see, touch, and feel. That's science. The Lord's going to ask me anything tough. Major, carbon-14 proves that creation is wrong. What about radiometric dating? Something tough. Biodiversity. Those are the tough questions. I never get them. Make me work. Something hard. When I do a program, I'm not interested in the people who believe what I want. So the only thing that I measure, I ask the students, I say, do you believe in creation? Do you believe in theistic evolution? Or do you believe that the Bible is false and evolution is true? And so then I take all of those who say that the Bible is false and evolution is true, and after they have seen the program, then I ask them again, I'm saying, you've been through the whole program, you've been here for 12 hours, do you still believe that evolution is true? You know how many of them say they still believe evolution is true? Only half. That means that they've never seen the evidence before for creation. They've never seen it before, yet they believe evolution. One student wrote, he said, I always believed that people who believed in creation, that it was based on scientific ignorance. That's what I always believed. He said, but now when I see the evidence for it, I can see why they hold fast to their faith. And he said, I'm not sure that I'm willing to give up evolution. But now I see that this was an area that I knew almost nothing about. Now, he really was changed. That is, he couldn't support his evolutionary views. He was holding on to it now as a matter of faith, as a matter of religion. I'm saying, look, that's okay. That's okay. I don't have a problem with that. But if you say that it's science, then you've got to prove it. So that's in the law. You have to prove it. And you have to prove it adversarially. I'm your opponent, and I'm trained. Let's see how well you do that. Let's see it. Let's see your science. Come forward with it. Yes.
I have a question. In light of what you presented before, many other theories besides evolution.
Yes.
Survival of the fittest and some other things that have come out of that. And oftentimes in discussions I've had with some of my colleagues, they talk about things about how man evolved from the primates and so forth.
Yes.
And I always ask the question like, well, why didn't it continue? Why isn't it continuing to move that way? They can't ask how would you
survival of the fittest. Do you know who coined that term? It was not Charles Darwin.
No.
It was Herbert Spencer, a philosopher. Do you believe that? The evolutionary theory was started by three people: Herbert Spencer, Alfred Russel Wallace, and Charles Darwin. Alfred Russel Wallace, I get tongue-tied trying. Alfred Russel Wallace and Charles Darwin wrote a paper together. And Herbert Spencer actually proposed it before they did, but he's a philosopher. So the all three of them Englishmen. So he coined the term survival of the fittest. So it had a social connotation. That's social Darwinism, right? And what we see when we actually look at the fossil record, particularly the primate fossil record, you know what I do in my program? And I could pull the slides up, but we don't have time tonight. I say, I'll tell you what, let's look at all, not some, all the so-called early man fossils, and you tell me which ones are ape fossils and which ones are human fossils. Let's take a look. All right? So we line them all up, and they're all available. And I show them, I'm saying, so let's take a look at a human jawbone, because that's where we usually look. Let's take a look at a human jawbone and an ape jawbone. Let's say, now we can see it. We're not waiting for some scientist to tell us, well, this is early man. So now let's go through all of them. Most of the primate fossils that they claim are human fossils, because a human lower jaw, mandible, has an arch to it, kind of, an arch. Whereas an ape is it's shaped like this. It's very pointed. It's an exaggeration to say that it's a V. It's not a V, but it is V-like. Can I say that? And most of the time, when they're trying to tell you this is early man, they're taking a juvenile ape fossil, which is curved like an arch. Right? So we take all of them and we show all of them, and I let the students to decide themselves. And they come up with the same conclusion that the scientists come up with. All of those are extinct, most of them are extinct ape fossils, or when you talk about Neanderthals, they're human fossils. There's no cross between them. You can decide for yourselves. If you took all the supposed early man fossils and we put up a 6-foot table up here, they'd all fit on one 6-foot table, 3 billion years, right? That's how much evidence you have. Yes, Professor.
All right, so evolutionists would say that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old.
All right.
And they will say there's carbon-14 dating, radiometric dating. How would you respond to those arguments about the age of the Earth versus 6,000 as the creationists believe?
Okay, so we've talked about creation, ways to measure the age of the Earth. Let's talk about some evolutionary techniques for measuring age, which is radiometric dating, and the distinction between carbon-14 and radiometric dating. Carbon-14 uses a carbon atom which has a half-life, a carbon-14 atom which is radioactive. That's why you can measure it. And it has a half-life of 6,000 years. Now, Professor, this isn't what you asked me, but I'm expanding. I'll get to radiometric dating, okay? So carbon-14 can only measures something that's alive. So there's carbon-14 in the air. We're breathing it in. Carbon-13 is normal carbon. It's not radioactive. Carbon-14 is made up in the atmosphere above the ozone layer when the sun hits it, and it knocks out some electrons, and it becomes radioactive. Okay, it's harmless, but it's floating around. There's about one carbon-14 atom for every trillion carbon-13 atoms, and we breathe it in. Okay, so we breathe it in, we breathe it out. Trees breathe it in, animals breathe it in. Anything that's alive, insects breathe it in, breathe it out. Anything that's alive breathes in carbon-14. When it dies, its carbon-14 clock starts. So when it dies, it no longer takes in carbon-14, and the measurable carbon-14 starts to decrease. Now you can measure, if your assumptions are correct, and our techniques are very good, you can measure how much carbon-14 is in something that is dead compared to what is in the atmosphere today. And if you knew how much carbon-14 there was to start with, the difference between the two could give you the age. But how much was there to start? That's the problem. So imagine this. I'm sorry. I really am sorry that I botched this really badly. I have all of this on my computer, but I bought the wrong connection cable with the monitor. So if it were on my computer, I could easily pull up the slides to show you. But now, if I wanted to pull it up, I have to take it off my computer, put it on the thumb drive, and then put it on this one. It just takes too much time, okay? But imagine this. Before Noah's flood, the world is just created. There's almost no carbon-14 at all. It was just created. There is no carbon-14. All right? So if you did not know that, you would find a fossil before the flood that has almost no carbon-14 in, and you would think that it was very, very old, when it wasn't. All right? It wasn't old at all, because you didn't know how much carbon-14 there was to start with. All right? So that's the problem with carbon-14. Now let's look at radiometric dating. Radiometric dating does not measure things that are alive. It measures rocks. And it measures the difference between what we call mother and daughter elements. So uranium to lead. When uranium, when it dies, it turns into the lead eventually, over a long period of time. potassium, argon. Those are different mother-daughter elements. Heavy radioactive elements degrade into a daughter element, all right? That's the simple way of measuring. And if your assumptions are correct, then it's that the ratio started with all mother elements and 0 daughter elements, then you're measuring time. But if your assumption is not correct, then you're not measuring time. Okay? So let me try to make it tough for myself, okay? Well, Mr. Creationist. All right, then where did the mother elements come from? Where did you get those heavy elements? Where did they come from? So if I wanted to be mean, I would just say, well, you don't know where they came from either. All right? But if I wanted to be nice in front of a group of students, I would say, actually, no one, until very recently, has known where heavy elements come from, above heavier than iron, which is about 60, an atomic weight of 60. You have heavy elements like uranium, which is 200 and some odd, electrons or something like that, very heavy. And we have fossilized heavy elements that are like 500 that don't exist anymore. Where could you get an element that can have that many electrons? That's impossible. I was surprised to learn that even the interior of the sun is not hot enough to strip the electrons off of an atom. The interior of the sun is about 27 million degrees. You need heat approximately 10 times that or 20 times that to do that. 600, you're talking 27 million degrees in the center of the sun. You need about 600 million degrees to do it. That's a toughie. But not too tough for God. And I'm not talking about faith either. I want you to think about this. And I have to be honest. I just want to be frank. I'm a legal scholar and a social scientist by training. I'm not trained in the natural or physical sciences. Science is for everyone. It's not just for those trained in the natural and physical sciences. Just like religion, faith is for everyone. It's not just for theologians. I was trained by the world's leading creation scientist, Dr. Walter Brown. He was my mentor, a good friend, and he just took time with me and explained things to me in a way that I could understand and trained me. Dr. Brown is, he's lost his hearing. He's closer to 90 than 85, okay? And I haven't been able to contact him recently. It bothers me. He's just really good. If any of you ever have a chance to purchase his book, In the Beginning, there's the last version that was in print was the 2008 edition. If you can find one on Amazon in the US, they're about $300 new. About $100 for a used one. Buy it. It will teach you everything that I'm saying. Everything. Now, I'm not going to tell you that there's some parts of it that are easy, but once you get to Bremsstrahlung radiation, you have to have your thinking cap on, okay? What happened at the flood? Noah's flood, what we call Noah's flood. There was a subterranean water chamber, I explained this before, 60 miles down. And on top of it, it was a mile deep, on top of it was 60 miles of granite. Have you ever, if you have a barbecue, you've bought these little barbecue lighters, right? It goes click and a flame comes out, right? What it does is, the little click, it has a little trigger that's connected, a little hammer that's connected to a spring. When you pull the trigger back, it compresses the spring, and when it gets pulled back far enough, it releases the spring, and there's a tiny little hammer that hits a piece of quartz. We call it the piezoelectric effect. Piezo means pressure electric. When that little hammer hits that piece of quartz, when you compress quartz, it makes a spark. We call it piezoelectric. Doesn't need a battery, doesn't need anything. That is, you hit it hard enough, it'll spark. So you pull the trigger back, it hits that little piece of quartz, it makes a spark, it releases a little bit of lighter fluid, and you get a flame. Okay? Piezoelectric. Well, had I had a piece of real granite here with me, I could show you that granite has tiny little pieces of quartz in it. It's actually back here in the slides. It's probably too far to go back. It's too far to go back. And I don't know how to do Windows, so I can't escape. I don't know how to escape. I don't know how to get back. But granite has tiny little pieces of quartz in it. All over it, little speckled pieces of quartz. There we go. Okay. Wow. This is what happened at the flood. Wow. Okay, so go here. Oh, there we go. Whoops. Whoa. There we go. Go down. Go this way. Go this way. Yeah, this way. Down. Very slow. Go slow. Oh, right there. That's the one. So here, if you look here, this is granite, this is rhyolite. Rhyolite is melted granite, and it has these layers in it. Natural granite is totally speckled, and it has quartz all through it. Now imagine this. You have a 60-mile thick sheet of granite covering the entire planet. That's the granite crust. Because of the tides of the moon are pulling on it constantly, and the sun too. You say, well, what makes granite doesn't stretch, does it? Yes, it does. If it's long enough, right? It doesn't have a lot of compression, but yeah, it can bend. You don't think that, right? But you make it long enough, it can bend, all right? And it can also sag, and we're talking about hundreds and thousands of miles, all right? 60 miles thick of granite. Over the whole surface of the earth, 60 miles is paper thin. It's paper thin when you look at the whole planet, just like this, all right? Paper thin. The granite crust cracked. The population of the world at that time was the same as it was today, 7 billion people. The granite crust cracked. It cracked because it got hot. And there was a microscopic crack that went up through that 60 miles, all right? Once it got to the top, there was a huge explosion that the world has never seen before or since. A huge explosion. 1,000 trillion atomic bombs went off all at once. It traveled at 12,000 miles an hour, and it encircled the entire planet in 2 hours. That steam exploded into outer space. There's an ocean of water beneath that granite crust, an ocean of water. As this granite now, all of its weight is pushing down it's like a giant pump. It's pushing down with billions of tons of energy on that mile-deep subterranean chamber. Not only because it was 1,000 degrees, but it was still water because it was under so much pressure. Suddenly the pressure is released. It explodes first as steam and then water. That's what created the flood. But as it's pushing out, it begins to resonate the granite crust that is 60 miles. It's 60 miles thick, but when you look around the whole planet, you couldn't even see it. It's so thin. It begins to flutter just like a flag in the wind. All right? And it has quartz in it. Piezoelectric. As it begins to flutter, it's like a giant hammer, just like that little click that you do with a lighter fluid that you light the barbecue with. It creates actually lightning bolts in the rock. Lightning bolts in the rock. And guess what the temperature is? It's hotter. Now you're talking about a very tiny, itsy bitsy targeted spot. It's hotter than the interior of the sun in that tiny itty bitty spot. 600 million degrees. Boom! When it hits that tiny little piece of quartz, it strips the electrons away, right? Once the electrons are gone, these atoms pull together with magnetic force. That's what creates heavy elements. That's what's created. That's what created them. All right? And they're super radioactive. They were created instantly, not over billions of years. And they degraded very quickly and left the daughter elements were always there. Now you find the heavy elements, and what you're measuring is an exact ratio. You're not measuring time. You assumed that the daughter elements came from the mother elements. Your assumption was wrong. That's the answer. It's called Bremsstrahlung radiation. To find that, to get that information, you really need Dr. Brown's 9th edition of his book, which has never come out. But I'm trying to make it available in electronic form. Pray for me. All right, we're trying to make it available in electronic form. It is available now. I would love to do it, but, yeah, I'm not trying.